Welcome. You're listening to the I'm Wired to Inspire podcast, creatively engineered by Robin Nicole, the inspiration specialist. I'm Wired to Inspire is a powerfully packed 5-minute podcast filled with inspiration and encouragement to get you through your day. It's designed to inspire you to live your authentic purpose. Now stay tuned for your host, Robin Nicole, the inspiration specialist, on today's episode of I'm Wired to Inspire.
It's BeBatonRouge Soul Sundays with Robin Nicole, the inspiration specialist, showered with power series.
Hey everyone, I am Robin Nicole, the inspiration specialist, and this is another episode of Soul Sundays with BeBatonRouge, and we are talking about the series Showered with Power for the entire month of April. And guys, last week we talked about purpose. Today we want to talk about originality. Now, if you listened to us last week, you'll find that we really broke down the things that we need to start paying attention to so that we can begin to see exactly what our purpose is. And many times we can overlook those things. So please make sure you go back and you check out the first episode of this series so that you can get caught up. Now, today, when it comes to being an original, now this may sound like, what do you mean? I'm an original. I do what I want. But I really felt led to talk about this because in this day and age, when we're talking about social media, when we're talking about the way the world is, it is very easy to become someone else or like someone else. We wake up one day and we realize that the things that we're constantly taking in, the things that we're looking at, the things that we're scrolling, the things that we're seeing, they begin to be subconsciously embedded on the inside. And what I want you to think about today is your unique originality. Now, something that I talked about last week also was about how we all have our own fingerprints, right? We have our own amount of hairs on our head and no one knows that amount. Everyone has something so uniquely original and different about them that sometimes we can forget and get lost in the shuffle because we're thinking that, okay, it's just little old me. It's whatever. It's not a big deal. Well, what we want to talk about today is what is it like to be a true original? Have you ever met those people and people say, oh, honey, they're going to do what they want. Honey, you can't tell them nothing. We meet and see those kinds of people all the time. But you ever notice that they have a certain type of freedom? They have a certain type of purity. And even if you don't like them, I think sometimes when people are so out there and they're original and they're doing their own thing, sometimes it's a bit too much for other people to take. And sometimes people may shun them because they think they're doing too much. But I always admire them, even if it doesn't necessarily float my boat. I always admire people who can tap into their originality. And I want you to begin to think about some things. So if you listened last week, you'll know that I like to give you steps. I want you to take action steps because I can tell you things all day long, but it's not about just telling you things. And what I like to tell people all the time is that, you know, we have this opportunity to hear things and listen to things that inspire us. But when we're listening and when we're hearing and we're taking in the information, guys, that only starts the conversation. But when you take action, that's going to change the narrative. And that's what we're here for. On Soul Sundays, it's all about getting to those breakthroughs. It's all about us getting to a better version of ourselves. That's what it's all about. And it's about remembering who you are at your core. You know, when we think about the things about our core, when we think about what really matters to us, when we look at our moral compass and we begin to think about the things that we believe in and what we stand for, when we zero in on that, those things really kind of give us perspective on what makes us original, okay? When you look at some of the most famous people in the world, some of the things they've achieved, most times we can say, wow, they're an original because typically they've done something we've never seen before. This usually is extremely inspiring, but most times the fuse just goes out. The flame doesn't stay lit because we kind of get caught up in seeing that they do something great and we don't even know how to think about that for ourselves. Well, the first thing I want you to think about when you speak on originality is when you begin to think about things in your first thought, before you let anybody else come into that thought, before you refer to anybody else, before you even allow your mind to think about something else, what's that first thought about? What's that original idea? You guys know sometimes you may see something and you say, oh, you know what? I would do this to it or that to it. And you may say it out loud and someone else may come in and say, man, you can't do that. Or you may look into it and say, oh man, someone has done that. Even if that's the case, if it's your original thought, then it's just a sign that if you keep thinking, if you keep focusing on making something better or whatever it is that you're focused on, in a positive way, of course, then you're going to come up with something that is all you, all originally you, all uniquely who you are. And it's very hard to get to that sometimes because, again, there's no roadmap, there's no book, there's no instructions on how to be an original. And I guess the best way I could break this down to you is maybe from the opposite standpoint, which is being a copy, right? We don't like copycats. Just in the world in general, we don't. And for multiple reasons. Let's talk about the multiple reasons why we don't like a copycat. We don't like a copycat, number one, because they didn't take the time out to do the work. Okay, so that's number one. We can't stand that because basically you a cheat, you a sucker. You took somebody else's work and now you're trying to say that it's yours. Okay, so that's the first thing about a copy that we don't like. Number two, when someone copies, they literally have no respect for you. They have no respect. Because at the end of the day, if you actually respected somebody and you wanted to recreate something they did, then all you would have to do is go and ask them or find a way to figure out how you can reinvent that or share it and say, hey, listen, I'm inspired by what you do. I would like to do something similar or whatever the case may be. So again, you don't have respect because they didn't respect you enough to even mention it to you, right? And thirdly, when you think about somebody copying, you know, you really just kind of feel violated. Because you know when you take your time to do something originally and someone comes in and they skip the entire process, it's a violation. Because if somebody begins to get accolades or money or all types of things for the things that you've done, that you literally feel violated, especially if you stayed up all night, especially if you've been praying about it, you've been working on it, you've been putting all of this energy into it, and here you are with someone who's copied. The reason why I wanted to give it to you from the opposite perspective is because that is going to encourage you to be an original. I want you to think about it like this. If you want to be well respected, if you want to be the person that inspires someone else to be great, and if you want to be the person that can say, hey, I did this from scratch, or hey, I built this team and I gave them my idea and hey, they came up with this part for me. If you want to be that person, then whenever you can feel yourself veering off and looking at other people's stuff too much, looking too far outside of yourself to get inspiration, pull yourself back in and take a moment and say, you know what? I know that there is something original in me. I see all of these different people doing things and I'm getting inspired and I'm getting encouraged to do it. But let me make sure that that's what I'm supposed to be doing. There's so many times, y'all, I see people do this all the time. I remember doing some projects before with some people, and somebody in a group, they were looking at someone else and they say, oh, that's easy, that's all it takes to do that, I'm going to do that too. And I can remember thinking, you may not be called to do that. Like, that was an original idea and other people were looking at it saying, oh, that's super easy to do, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And they were planning on taking someone else's idea, and I'm like, man, I'm not about to be cavorting with people like this who they plan and plot on other people's ideas. And something that I want you to get is this, y'all. When you are an original, it does not matter who is similar. It does not matter what else is going on. You just have to keep it pure. You have to do it the way you're supposed to be doing it. Someone was saying to me the other day they didn't want to do something because somebody else did it. I said, well, wait a minute. Is there only one song in the world? Is there only one comb in the world? Is there only one car in the world? No, that's why there's plenty of room for all of us to still put things out in the earth and out in the atmosphere, out in the world that are all original ideas from us. Yes, we cannot reinvent the wheel, but we can certainly put rims on it. That's what I tell people all the time. What is your wheel? What is your wheelhouse? No, just because you have a wheel, that's great because you need a wheel to start. But in order for it to be original, you need to put your own rims on it. Because guess what? When you do that, that makes it original for you. It is so easy to feel like who you are and what you have is not good enough, but that's not true. Your originality is contingent upon how real you're going to be with yourself, not how real you appear to other people. Your originality is about you getting to the bottom of who you are. It's not about trying to get somebody else to say, oh, well, I think she's this, or oh, well, I think he's that. No, you're being original. Trust me. When God made you, hear me out on this. When you were made and you came into this world, there was something original about you that no one else could ever do like you. Very few people figure out what that is in their lifetime. And you want to know why? It's not because they don't want to know. It's not because they're too lazy. Not all the time, at least. It's not because it's so hard and it's so difficult to do. No, most people never get to it because guess what? They figure it can't be done. They say it's an idea. They say, oh, well, maybe, oh, that can never be me. Man, people that actually like my cooking if I did it like that. Nobody make my red beans like this. Nobody make my pies and my cakes like this. Okay, so here's the thing. When it comes to being an original, you have to break down what is that going to look like for you. I try to encourage people when they get to this place in their lives and they're focusing on their purpose and they get tired of seeing everybody else and they say, man, I want to do my own thing. I want to be an original. Everybody doing this now. Everybody saying this now. I don't want to do that. I want to do me. I always encourage people, shut everything down for a minute. So that's your instruction this week. Shut everything down. Stop listening to everybody. Stop giving them your ideas. Stop searching for other people's opinions. But I want you to sit down, get you a notebook from the dollar store if you have to. Write it on your cell phone and your notepad if you have to. Open up an email and email it to yourself if you have to. But this week you have to take time and log. You have to listen and log. Listen to your own thoughts. Listen to your own ideas and begin to log them. And when you do that, you are going to find there are so many things hidden beneath the surface within you that are all original, things that you never thought about before because the clutter will be gone. Who you are and who you're called to be. First, like we talked about last week, operating in purpose. In order for you to operate in excellence in your purpose, you're going to have to make sure you begin to get that clean slate so that you can be the original that you were called to be. There are so many things that can coax you or make you think that what you have and who you are is not good enough, to the point that some people think that they don't even have an original thought or idea. They think, man, I mean, whatever. I can't come up with nothing. Already that's a defeatist attitude. I'm telling you, listen, I'm not making this up. I'm not trying to buck you up and just tell you something cool on this show today. I'm not trying to do that. What I want you to really understand is if God did it for me, he can do it for you. This is not something where only one person can be original, where only certain type of people can be original. If you figure that there is something that you can do in your unique way, then do it. And I'll give you something that has inspired many people. And I heard someone say it a while ago, and I began saying it as well. You want to ask God for his creative genius. And moreover, you want to seek within. And you want to figure out what it is that you have to say. Y'all, it's time to start loving yourself enough to believe that there is something original about you. You have to start loving yourself enough to know that what's in your core and who you are and what's on the inside in its original state is good enough. But sometimes we can't even get to that state because we are so focused on what's going on around us. We're so busy, in some cases, believe it or not, picking apart other people because they shooting their shot. Y'all, in this season, if we're going to consistently be showered with power so that we can operate the way we're called to operate, you cannot focus on knuckleheads. You can't focus on foolery. And if you're one of those people who don't do that anyway, you have to keep the main thing the main thing. You can have all the money in the world, all of the influence, all of the friends, but some of you lack originality because sometimes it's just easier not to be an original. It's easier to go with the flow. But I want to encourage you today. If you're listening to this, it's not a mistake. You're supposed to hear this because listen, there is something about you being an original that is mind-blowing to somebody. There's something about you being an original that is going to change someone's life. There is somebody listening and you are holding on to an idea and you are afraid to say it because you think it's going to be stupid. You think people are going to laugh at you. Well, let me give you a little business tip I'm going to throw in here. I want you to look online and download an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. And if you think you have a great idea and you want to share it with somebody, make them sign that first. So once you tell them whatever it is that you want to tell them, your original idea, they can't go behind your back and take it, because guess what we're going to also do in 2018 and in this season? We are going to be smart. And if you're going to operate in your originality, you're going to show them you ain't coming to play. Now, you might not know nothing else after that until you get the next part of the puzzle. But guess what? You are going to figure out today how you can be authentically original for yourself. And those ideas that you've been toiling with, those things that you think aren't good enough, those things you think people are going to laugh at, you'd be surprised, because those are the very things that change the world. Look at all of the different things that we use. How foolish did you think the guy looked when he made the wheels for the car? How foolish do you think people sounded when they say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do these things and like it just looks like hair on top of your head, but it's not your real hair. Wigs, this is like what, 16th century? This is years ago this stuff came out, decades and hundreds of years ago. You know, when these things come out, it's original and nobody knows. But y'all, you have that same capability. The way the world is now, there is no reason why you shouldn't be doing things that really allow you to tap into who you are originally made to be. There is promise in that. You are doing the world a grave disservice when you are not being your original self. I want to encourage you today. I want to fill your soul on this Sunday with a reminder that not only can you operate in the power and be showered in your power, but you can be the original that you are made to be, the original that you are called to be. Continue to talk it out. Be alone this week. Write those things out. Really pray about them. Figure out what that's going to look like for you. And when you come to the realization that there is something there, then I want you to say, okay, what are my action steps? What do I have to do now? And then you begin to be quiet. You become very prayerful, methodical, thoughtful. Get into that space so that you can actually execute your original ideas. This is what it's all about. I want you to be encouraged today, y'all. Take some time out to love yourself back to life, y'all. Don't waste time worrying about other people. Don't waste time being a copy. Don't waste time feeling like what you have is not original, because you absolutely have what it takes. And I want to make sure that you guys join us next week when we get to the W. And that's when we talk about the warrior within. We've talked about purpose. Today, we've talked about being an original. And now you're going to be able to hear what happens once you start to figure out your purpose. You operate in originality. And then you need that warrior spirit to come through so that you can execute an entire season of being showered with power. I am Robin Nicole, the inspiration specialist, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Shower with Power series on Soul Sundays with BeBatonRouge.